honored to have you in the playbook. And thank you for being with us today.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Thank you. Would you please tell us something about your childhood? Who were the early influences? What were your interests?
Well, I come from a family of 6 girls and 4 boys, raised on the Musqueam Reservation. My mother was the first non-native. She was actually, my mother's Norwegian Scottish, married into the reserve. And when I was growing up, it's a normal life like anybody else, but we didn't know that, we're in a community that was a reservation. We didn't know the difference at the time. But it was a tough life. When we were raised, we had no running water in the home. We had no facilities like for a bathroom, and we just had a sawdust stove. But our mother and father made that we didn't know we were poor, so we had a happy life as far as not knowing that what we didn't have didn't make a difference to us, because we struggled, but we didn't know that it was tough times. But I think those times made us tough today, just to survive and have a better way of life. Our playground was the reservation. We went to school. We interacted in our own community. The Fraser River was my swimming pool.
Wow.
And my diving board was the logs on the river. In the winter, where the Chinese farms were adjacent to us, was our skating rink. They would freeze over in the winter time. And the parks here were our playgrounds in the winter time for sleigh riding and tobogganing. But we stayed to ourselves a lot. We didn't integrate. And I never knew I was half Indian. I knew that I was just a First Nations. And I was the first blonde baby born on the reservation.
Wow.
Yeah, so the old timers would come and look at me and touch my head and say, "Is that real hair?" Because they never seen such a white baby. So yeah. But I could say all in all, we were like any normal family, except for we were labeled as First Nations. We lived on a reservation. We were, basically struggling, lower class family because of the hard times and the way that life was in those days. I think all the generation of the baby boomers grew up in a situation where it was tough times, but that made you tough. In our cultural ways with our old timers, I like to serve the people, so I was always playing with the old timers who taught me a lot of things about leadership, who taught me about serving people and helping people. And so because of the influence of my father being the chief, he was the first band manager in Canada. My grandfather's a chief, and then when my time came, the teachings and the examples I had of leadership in my family helped me to rise up and take a position where I could serve in the same manner, as my father and my grandfather, because I looked up to them, and they paved the way, to open the door for me.
Yes. So the masculine visions are captured in the symbol for "We are of one heart and mind." Could you please tell us a bit about the statement?
Well, in First Nations communities, a lot of times when we're growing up, we're very divided because of the integration, of the government and their standards that they impose on us. And then when there's a lot of changes are happening, we kind of we're no different. There's a lot of jealousies, a lot of indifferences, a lot of mixed, feelings and a lot of grudges and a lot of negativity. So they realized that in order to become stronger as a community, that we must adopt one heart, one mind, one spirit. It's not that we all are one heart, one mind, one spirit, but if we can try individually to be that way, then we can actually help our community to grow and prosper and change, as what we should be traditionally, because we were at one time a community that was strong, united, and close, and but then through time it changed. So now we're trying to reinstitute that in our community, of that spirit, as we live together. We have to grow together and adopt so we can, be stronger and better.
As a former chief, what do you think is the most important characteristic of a chief?
A chief must have, first of all, must work from their heart. And then, when you work with your heart and you connect to your mind, then the spirit can reach out to the people. Because our people have been betrayed many times by false promises and false hopes. But if a chief works from their heart to serve the people, has integrity, has honesty, has trust, and also has the characters that they love and they really do care. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's a quality because that's where women work from our matriarch society. We work from our heart, which is the center of your your whole being. And so that's a quality that I would carry, because that's where I was taught by my father and my grandfather, that they all stood for the people and by the people and served the people that way. In our society, interesting enough, because we come from a matriarch society, my grandfather told us many different type of stories about the fact is it was when we lived in longhouses prior to contact. The women were the ones that gave the direction to the men, because we lived in long houses. There were like 10 families in a house, and they would direct them what to do, to go and get the food, to do the hunting, and do the providing for the families. And then when it came back to the longhouse, women were in charge, because women gave life. Life comes from women, the womb of the woman. So the men, looked up to that. And so women work from their heart, from their core, and they give life. So they have a way of being able to show a better way of life, because of the strength that we have. And to this day, I still connect to that. And our people have become so adapted to a way of life where the Western influence with the infiltration of alcohol and drugs, and to reconnect with your standards, traditionally and culturally, that who we are as a people made us distinct. Alcohol was not used, pre-contact by us. Drugs was not an issue. The standards of the success of our self-government was that we worked and provided, and there was a strength in our community that we survived, because of the innate ability of saying First Nations were strong, they were talented, they were gifted, they survived, they provided in this country the strength of it was like the history is written in the earth, my sister says, is that in providing from the earth, their way of life. Yes. And now today, the way of life is not the way that I grew up. I see the big changes, and until we can understand the fact that we did wrong by adapting those ways and we lost our identity. We need to identify who you are and the strength of our traditional ways that we survived prior to contact, and the changes that we made today are not the right changes. The most pressing issue with us right now is to reestablish our community, our traditional cultural strengths and skills and lifestyles that we had, which did not, how would you say this, that we never had before a problem socially. We were socially, did not have the ills that we have today, and that's the chronic condition we have of alcohol and drugs, which leads to unemployment, leads to to the dependence of the welfare, which we never had welfare to 1965. Prior to that, we worked for ourselves, provided for ourselves. Yes. And we need to do that's when we have to own that problem, and the solution is to start living our life away from that dependency and to be independent. As a First Nations, self-government is governing yourself, and then when we can learn to govern ourselves, then we don't have to say. We can say no to alcohol, no to drugs, no to a dependent life on the welfare system, and be independent. And there's a lot of opportunities for the economic strength that we have in our community to tap into the economic strengths that we have to educate and to employ and to work and do our own businesses. So we continue to have our own people working in our government, working in our society. Carrisville community was my playground. That's where I learned to swim in the Fraser River, and then when we found there was lots of contamination in the river, we advanced up and went to Carrisdale. We walked from the reserve to Carrisdale, and we were water rats. We lived in the pool. Wow. Yeah, and when the pool would close, we'd wait outside until it opened again. We'd go morning till evening. Education was not ingrained in us to succeed, and because of the problems with First Nations and non-natives in the school system, there's a lot of racial problems, so a lot of our people dropped out of school and only went to grade 8 or 10, but I did go to grade 12. I was driven to succeed and to be educated. So, but no, we have many fond memories of Carrisdale. We still patronize Carrisdale today.
I'm personally envisioning that our center will become a learning community or creativity lab where meaningful dialogue can take place and leading to sometimes significant change. However, we do need new innovation to encourage such a collaborative, creative climate. What is your vision on it? How would you like to foster a good working relationship with a Kerrisdale Community Center, for example?
Well, I really believe that Kerrisdale needs to open up the door, understand that Kerrisdale was Musqueam.
Yes.
And we have rich cultural heritage
Yes.
that we can share with Kerrisdale. Because, Kerrisdale, prior to the name Kerrisdale, was Musqueam.
Yes.
And it would be nice to have Kerrisdale open the doors to our arts, our
Yes.
crafts,
I would love that.
our language, our history that they could teach. And so they know really who they are,
Yes.
and who built this. My grandfather was the one that worked with the settlers here in Vancouver and opened up the roads. The roads were logged by First Nations and the Asian community. And we did a lot to build this area of Kerrisdale. It was First Nations. If it wasn't for us, actually living and existing here, there wouldn't be a Kerrisdale. And I think the community center could open it up and integrate also and invite our community in to participate in the programs and activities like you've gone to our Aboriginal Day. Kerrisdale has got carnival days that they have. They could also have more a theme around First Nations because we're so close.
What would you like to do to relax?
Well, I really don't like relax because I've never been married, but my nickname my grandfather gave me was Chief Looking for a Husband. And so it never worked. So now today I have 25 nieces and nephews, first generation, 35 second generation. They're my life.
Yes.
And so my door is open, my heart is open, and the kids are my way of enjoying life.
This title is still valid.
Well, I use it, it doesn't harm anything, but
Yes.
it's a way that my grandfather always taught me. When you meet people, the most number one quality that you could have is to make them laugh.
Yes.
Laughter is healthy. Laughter opens up doors. Laughter shows really who you are. And so that was the way that he said to me, I feel sorry for you, you're not married. And I said, yes. And he said, so I'm going to give you a name that's going to help you. And I said, what is the name? He said, Chief Looking for a Husband. And he was almost 100. So in his good sense, I used that title, but it never helped. But no, my form of relaxing is serving and being with my family. And with my family, we're always, having time for bike rides. We go to movies. They come to my home for entertainment. The food, and we're cohesive that way. We just our time together is fun.
Yes.
And that's the most important quality to have is when you have youth, they want to they make you youthful also.
That's right.
That's my key to staying young is always to keep kids, and the kid in you stays there, and I can just be with them, and that's fun for me. Osteoarthritis condition, changed my lifestyle, to be healthier, to be more active, to run for office again, to be chief or councillor, and also to be an example to the community and my family by reinstituting my profession to go back into working in recreation and community development and programs that can help with our social ills.
Yes.
And educating myself again, to go back to school and to learn about photography, which is one of my goals. So to keep living, to keep growing, and to be alive. So that's what my goal is, to not stop living at 60, but start living again. That doesn't stop there; it starts again. I really think what you just asked me to do is a step outside of our comfort zone in our communities. Is that understand that we are a community that has been maybe quietly like a sleeping giant. Sitting there as a reservation makes you reserved. And in order for us to make the change, in our to stay distinctly who you are, but also to make the move to integrate with our members outside of Musqueam, this is part of it.
Yes.
Yes, this is the change that we must step up and start doing, like we've done 20 years ago. But somehow or other we've slipped back. Now we have to come back up again.
And it goes vice versa for us too.
Yes, it has to go both ways. Being First Nation is not something that's a bad thing. No. People label you, but no, being First Nations, we're first, we're of this nation. And we're really the forefathers that built this country and built Kerrisdale, built Dunbar, built Vancouver. We were here first.
Yes.
So, but it's our problem also because we allow ourselves to be staying separated in one little community, which we shouldn't be. And it was our forefathers and ancestors that welcomed the New World. And that's what we're really doing again, history repeating itself.
Yes.
It's time to open up
Yep.
and welcome and bring in,
Yeah.
you know, new people, new way of life, and to integrate it that way. So,
Yeah. Thank you.